Good afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on your locale, everyone. This is Bob Noseworthy with the University of New Hampshire's Interoperability Lab. I hope you can all hear me okay. Today we're going to be talking about our vIOLett software, and my colleague Daroc Alden will also be giving part of this presentation.
Yeah, I'm a technical manager at the IOL, and I work with Bob on our time-sensitive networking.
Thanks, Daroc. So we have a bit to go through. We're going to try to leave as much as we can for questions at the end. Also encourage you to use the question chat system here so that we can capture your questions and make sure we don't lose track of them. Feel free to reach out to us afterwards as well if we don't happen to address all of your questions in this webinar. We're going to give a quick background about the IOL. Some of you I think are very familiar with this, and some perhaps are coming to us for the first time or the first time learning about our vIOLett tool, which will be our main focus here, and how we're using it for timing sensitive tests around 1588 and TSN. We'll certainly do a demo as well of the tool and talk about some of the features we're working on. And yes, I realize chat is disabled, but feel free to drop your questions and we will try to address them as we can at the end of the talk here. As many may know, our laboratory has been in operation since '88, roughly 33 years now. We're located just north of Boston in Durham, New Hampshire on the main campus of the university. We're a nonprofit neutral third-party test organization. We also develop tools such as the vIOLett tool we'll be speaking to today, test plans, supporting standards organizations, hosting plugfests, all that sort of work. And just as a quick history of our specific involvement with 1588 and related technologies, beyond the Ethernet testing that we've done since our inception, we've been party to the various IEEE 802.3 and 802.1 activities in this space, including the residential Ethernet effort, at this point 16 years ago. We were proud to be the host in 2010 of the ISPCS conference, the International Symposium on Precision Clock Sources, also the Plugfest for that year. And in 2012, we began working with NIST for 1588 development, both as initial training for our team here and initial development of test plans around smart grid interests, and started working with the Avnu Alliance on developing their test capabilities for the AVB technologies, which later became TSN or time-sensitive networking. In that space, we developed the initial offering of the vIOLett tool that we'll be presenting here today. So what we cover at the moment is quite a large swath of space. From those I see in attendance, I see some from all facets of our involvement here, from our early effort with NIST through to present day pilot testing with participants in our Power Profile certification effort, where we're working with the IEEE SA's Conformity Assessment Program to launch a certification for the power profiles utilized in the smart grid. We are working with some industry support from our members for expanding our 1588 services around such areas as the Telecom profile for ITU-T G8275.1 and .2. And we're also seeing quite a bit of interest in having a Plugfest for the 8262.1 capabilities. For some 9-10 years, we've been Avnu Alliance test house, their recognized test facility. We've worked with the Open Alliance since their inception as well, supporting their 100 base T1, 1000 base T1 and related technologies from that automotive focused organization. And we're supporting conformity assessment efforts for the industrial TSN profile, including physical layer work with the Ethernet APL community for that emerging 10 megabit single pair Ethernet technology. All of these playing a larger role in the ecosystem of TSN. So what is vIOLett? In general, it's a framework that is simply here for our automation ease of running through conformance tests and in some cases assisting in interoperability testing as well. We do utilize it here within the lab for our certification testing for the Avnu Alliance, for bridges, for the Milan Endstations and Pro AV Endstations, for automotive certification for the Avnu Alliance and other automotive test cases from the Avnu Alliance and automotive test cases from the Open Alliance. And in our PTP group for 1588, it is the basis for the coverage we're offering in the power profile space and developing in the telecom profile spaces. As many may be aware, there's been some very recent updates to such popular standards as the 1588 standard, updated in 2019, and the 802.1 AS standard, or gPTP, updated in 2020, which we are working to address pending the release of these updated tools and complete launch of the Power Profile certification. I also want to take a moment to call your attention to and give my thanks to the Internet Society. ISOC provided us a generous gift at the end of last year to support the development of network time security for the network time protocol for NTP, specifically for conformance testing and assisting in interoperability testing of that standard from the IETF. And also because it is anticipated to be a foundational element of the growing need for security in the timing space in 1588 as well. We have also already provided open source material for implementations of the 1588-2019 security TLV, which you're happy to contact us offline for more on that topic. Meanwhile, we continue to expand our efforts with Open Alliance and the industrial TSN activities, of which some I will speak of in the coming moments. But for now, we'll go into a little bit more depth of the features of vIOLett.
vIOLett, at the current time, covering all of the different areas that Bob mentioned, includes more than 1,500 conformance and interoperability tests. Most of those are completely automated so that vIOLett provides the correct stimulus, records the result, and determines whether a device passes or fails completely automatically. For the rest of the tests, vIOLett can assist human testers by keeping a log of exactly when testing was performed and how, and still doing that automated analysis to help prevent mistakes. Additionally, vIOLett has a controllable REST API so that it can be integrated into other automatic testing, and widgets that fall outside of what a particular test plan requires, but that lets you use the same ability to emulate different protocols to create test situations in order to try to explore the behavior of various devices. Could I get the next slide, Bob? Thank you. I'll go into a little bit more detail about the REST server. If you use vIOLett, you get this. It doesn't need any extra license. And it will allow you to automatically run tests, get results, modify tool configurations, and more. Basically, everything you can do through the tool's GUI, you can do through the REST interface. We have a open source web client that uses the REST interface to remotely control a vIOLett instance. And I know that we have a few customers who are looking at using the REST API in order to integrate vIOLett into their continuous integration or regression testing setups. vIOLett also has a number of different widgets, both for PTP and also for emulating particular streams or just verifying details of the installation of the various tools that vIOLett supports. These widgets are a really powerful tool for enabling you to reproduce different scenarios in order to explore the behavior of a device. And they are also useful, for example, to test 1722.1 to set up tests using vIOLett as your AVDEC controller, and to use vIOLett's hardware timestamping abilities and to emulate gPTP so that you can, for example, set up some other test from that same computer, but rely on vIOLett to make sure that everything stays synchronized. Violet also, in addition to the REST API, has a batch mode, which enables you to script tests to run ahead of time and then run them from the command line without requiring user interaction. I know that that's also been used in a few people's test environments in order to automate usage of Violet. And finally, Violet has the ability to interface with several different external tools, most notably the Ixia brand of traffic generators. If you have an AVB-capable Ixia card, Violet can be set up to automatically control it in order to run FQTSS tests, both for automotive and non-automotive purposes. We're looking at expanding this capability, but it's already capable of running all of the non-automotive FQTSS test cases that require traffic generation, and it enables automating those tests where it would otherwise be infeasible to do with network cards.
Thank you, Daroc. And before we get into a demo of the tool that we have prepared for you, I do just want to mention that many times our customers simply engage with us by securing a license to the tool, downloading it, setting up their system, and going about their business. But in some cases, it is convenient to have a pre-configured system provided, and we're happy to work with our customers who wish to see that option pursued. Feel free to contact us if that's of interest. But with that, we'll go through a demo that Daroc has previously recorded. Helps to make sure everything goes smoothly. But we'll certainly have a little bit more after this demo and then some question and answer period.
In this demo, I'm going to show you how you can use the UNH-IOL Violet testing software in order to improve your in-house testing. When you first open Violet, it'll show you this blank window. Go up to the Select Mode menu, and you'll see a number of different modes. Depending on what license you have and what version of Violet you're using, different modes will be listed here. There are modes for each individual test plan that Violet supports, as well as having aggregate modes that contain all of the tests that are necessary to specify a particular class of device. In particular, for this test, I have an Extreme Networks bridge that was certified some years ago, hooked up to our test stations, so we'll select the bridge mode. When you open a mode, Violet will make sure that you've agreed to the licenses for all of the different software components. Once you've accepted the licenses, you'll see that Violet lists all of the tests that are present in a particular mode over on the left-hand side. Let's go through what you'll need to set up in order to run the first common gPTP test. If you go to General Tool Settings, you'll see that Violet enables you to specify a number of different tool-wide settings, including who is performing the testing and what device is being tested. This information gets included in the log files that Violet generates, which can be used as artifacts to show when, by whom, and how testing was performed. Violet also enables you to specify that tests should be repeated a number of times in order to ensure that results are reproducible. Violet also has a REST API, which can be used to control the tool. And if you enable the REST API, and then visit the location in a web browser, you'll see that the Violet REST API is self-documenting, including examples of how to specify the different commands to take actions within Violet. This makes Violet easy to integrate into your existing workflows or your existing regression testing. Once you've configured the tool's general behavior, you want to open the resources. Resources are pieces of hardware or other software that Violet can control in order to do testing. Depending on your operating system and on your license, you'll see different resources here. Violet supports using generic test stations that support the Linux SO timestamping interface for hardware timestamping, and has specific integrations with the Oregano and i210 NICs. In Windows, Violet also supports Echo cards and supports controlling Ixia test stations, which include Ixia hardware stream generation. For this particular test, I have some i210 test stations hooked up to the bridge that we'll be using. When you go to add a particular resource, Violet includes a list of the different NIC cards that it can discover and lets you specify a human-readable name to keep them straight. There are also specific settings for individual resources, which you can use to fine-tune your test stations in order to ensure that your results are as precise as possible. After you've configured your test stations, you'll need to configure the details for the particular test modes that you're going to use. In this case, gPTP lets you specify which test stations you're going to use, which resources you're going to use for each test station, as well as a number of protocol-specific options. Violet can use these options to automatically determine which tests are applicable or not applicable, and to change the behavior of tests to match the capability of your devices. If you make a mistake in setting up the configuration of a test, then you'll see that Violet will usually be able to detect that the configuration doesn't make sense. In such a case, all you need to do is correct the configuration and rerun the test. Violet will go through the steps of the test plan and automatically determine whether the test is passing or failing. Most tests are completely automated, but some tests may require testers to take action, and those tests will pop up a dialog box describing what the tester needs to do. After Violet has run a test, you can view the results in the results viewer. The results viewer lists all the previous runs of a test and enables you to view them and see what happened. Violet also remembers what tests you've done. So if you close Violet and then launch it again, you'll see that after a moment, it loads the previous results. And if you open the results viewer, they show up. You can also use the results viewer to annotate a particular result, both an entire test session or a particular test, if you wanted to describe why a particular test was invalid. You can also choose to override the result, which will be visible in the logs, but which won't rewrite the logs. The logs will still have the original result. We'll just also have an annotation saying who made what comment on the test. Violet also colorizes the results so that you can tell at a glance what you've run and what you have left to run. Violet isn't only useful for running conformance tests, though. Violet is also useful to try to debug problems with your device. For example, if we went to the bridge gPTP mode, Violet has a number of different widgets which can be used to emulate different aspects of the protocol. For example, if we were concerned about a problem with the implementation of p-delay, we would use the p-delay emulator in order to simulate a valid link partner and use that to determine whether or not there are any issues with the device. Violet also supports a sniffer widget, which can be used in order to determine whether Violet is seeing exactly the same thing as your device on the wire. If you specify where your Wireshark installation is, then you can use the sniffer widget to open Wireshark, showing the frames from Violet as well as from the device, which can also be very useful for debugging. Overall, Violet enables you to automatically and reliably test devices both for conformance testing and to try to reproduce particular situations that might show a bug in your product. Violet has several other little features, like, for example, automatic update tests. And if you're interested, you should reach out to the IOL with your questions to see what version of Violet might be right for you.
Thank you, Daroc, for putting that demo together. Oops. Continuing on, or fighting the system.
In this demo,
Always good to fight
I'm going to show you how
I'm just going to talk briefly about the current ways to access the tool, our current capabilities, and some of the things that are in the works or planned. So with this webinar, we're announcing the launch of our PTP Violet tool. This offers power profile coverage for both the 61850-9-3 and C37.238 profiles. This is in a beta condition as we continue to work with the pilot participants, NIST and the IEEE to formally adopt and approve the governing test plan for that certification effort. We're also working, as mentioned, on coverage for the ITU 8275.1 and .2, which we do plan to make available for those who wish to have that in-house as well. So feel free, please, to reach out to us after this webinar for more information on how to gain access to demos or betas of these releases. Our Avnu tool is also been available now for some years, almost 10, I think. And as listed here, there are many various packages covering your various product needs. And we have test coverage for other .1Q needs, such as MSTP, VLANs, filtering database, etc. More coming all the time. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the needs we've encountered that go beyond just software-based testing of the style that we've pursued with Violet up till now. Certainly, as evidenced with the use of the Ixia automation to augment the software-based generation capability with the hardware capabilities of the Ixia, there are cases when we just need the dependability and reliability of, in this case, an FPGA-backed hardware solution to provide us the deterministic guarantees we're looking for when we're testing TSN solutions. So for the past year, we've had in development a tool that would be targeted towards extending Violet's capabilities with this hardware capability. For decades, UNH-IOL has been offering FPGA-capable test services in our Ethernet space for conformance of very low-level 802.3 standards with a family of tools that we lovingly call bitfire. And those are available today from our Ethernet services. But that's not functioning as a NIC. This solution will go above the PCS layer where necessary, but function as a NIC and be able to integrate with our Violet software. So we are looking to support the needs of AS 2020 with time relay functionality, gPTP hardware support, a master slave built into the hardware, 1 PPS support, eventually 1-step, though not initially. We will be releasing that this year is the plan. Time-aware shaping, preemption, CB, all areas that we wish to support, as well as our continued support through that platform of the various slow protocols, as .1 refers to them, for things like MSRP or such. But this coupling with our platform more tightly will enable a better integration with this various stream generation needs we have. A large driving force for this is coming from funding that we have under contract with certain DoD activities to enable TSN test tools to meet their particular needs. The result of this is intended to be a public available test plan, and our tool is aimed to try to support that as much as possible. That said, we will certainly be leveraging industry available solutions where we can, whether it's Ixia, Spirent, Xena networks. We've been very happy to work with partners in the industry such as NetTime Logic to enable all of this capability that I'm describing. Beyond the FPGA that I just mentioned, I do want to stress that through our involvement with the Avnu Alliance and their testability committee, we helped develop what is referred to as a command and control interface, of which we have an implementation of an API for that interface posted on our open source software site, indicated here. And it is intended to help further automate some of the testing that at the moment, especially on the automotive side of testing, is a little bit manual intensive, given that every vendor solution has a slightly different way how one accesses certain diagnostics or exception logs, for example. So this solution, we still encourage our partners and customers to work with us on developing as we continue to integrate more capabilities into our tool. As shown on the right here, this will be a RESTful client within our tool that communicates to an external RESTful server, YAML-based, Swagger-defined RESTful API that can be implemented in a number of different stub programming languages, be it there are stub languages of C++, Java, Python, you name it, to help speed your integration, just like the RESTful server that Violet has integrated to control the automation of Violet itself. We're looking to try to encourage the adoption of this scheme to speed the automation of devices under test in whatever capacity is needed. In addition to that, we are mindful that our users would benefit from having the ability to edit existing tests or create their own. We have demonstrated this capability in past plugfests and are continuing to look at when we can field that capability to our customers with the proper support levels. I am especially interested in any who are interested in participating in a TSN plugfest, be it around the telecom profile aspects of 8262.1, further TSN telecom interests, or generic interests in preemption and time-aware shaping. It's been a number of years since our last plugfest for preemption and time-aware shaping. And I am looking to coordinate with CalNex to gain access to a NEO for this event, and our Ixia, Spirent, and Xena hardware that we have in-house at the lab, as well as our Paragon X from CalNex, will be available for that plugfest as well. So invite a comment from those as far as how we can support your plugfest needs. We are, of course, still in a challenging time with the pandemic, and when we can have a physically attended plugfest versus a virtual plugfest will be an item of debate for this calendar year, but one we seek to hope to entertain as a physical event, perhaps in the fall, if not earlier. Meanwhile, we are looking to work with the IEEE to launch the ballot for the TSS, the Test Suite Specification, in early February to finally launch what has been unfortunately delayed because of the pandemic, the Power Profile certification that has been long in the works here, while also quickly moving to support expansion of that program, whether it's to the telecom certification areas, if as interested by those utilities working with us, or newer areas such as HSR, PRP, newer in the sense of coverage by the program, certainly not as far as the standards. But we're certainly here to work with you and work with your needs. So with that, I would certainly remind folks that your membership helps support our activities here. Several in attendance here are members of different aspects of our lab, and we do appreciate that. Members help shape our direction, and this type of dialogue and discussion is where we encourage it, whether it's through webinars such as this, or direct outreach, or targeted discussions where necessary. Certainly, there's probably much more to discuss, but I want to make sure we have ample time to address your questions. So with that, I will perhaps turn it back to you, Mara. I've paid attention to all the questions coming in.
No, go ahead and answer the questions as you see them,
Oh,
Bob.
okay. I've got the window open now, sorry. Okay. Let's see, the first question I have about sharing the presentation, I do certainly believe we'll be posting the slides and this recording. So certainly we'll make sure that those in attendance get access to those links. And again, that you'll be able to share those to others as you need to. Daroc, do you have more?
No, sorry, I hit the answer live button to keep track of which questions have been answered.
I gotcha. Okay, no problem. I see a question around Spirent testing. So very much interested and very much desired. We had early plans of integrating actually quite tightly with the C50 platform from Spirent. Unfortunately, it comes down to resources, and we simply have not had sufficient resources available to devote to integrating with that platform. It's something we remain open to, but one of the areas of need that this tool, vIOLett, has not yet integrated is DBDK, which would ease that integration effort greatly with some of our desired approaches with integration, at least. We have had very close contact with the team at Spirent and discussions on doing just that. And we also, on another tool that the IOL offers, the Intact tool that we use for our V6 testing, they have gone so far as to add DBDK support, but unfortunately that was not for the express purpose of integrating with Spirent. Nonetheless, whether it's Spirent, Ixia, Xena Networks, or any other tool provider, we're more than happy to have a conversation with how we can extend our tools' capabilities or continue to work with our customers to see how we can enable them to leverage some of the capabilities of something like a Spirent platform if we have not yet enabled that. So it's a discussion I'm happy to continue with you. And yeah, I think we answered that question. Test creation is does some test creation expose REST API code examples? The way there's a couple ways I can try to take that question. Let me try to touch on a few variants, and feel free to clarify, John, if need be. The REST API we provide at the moment is a REST server for the tool to run any script that is in the tool. That would include any future ability to add custom scripts as we use reflection to identify and discover tests that are available in the tool. So if a customer added tests with the ability described as a future addition, then yes, those tests would be exposed through the same REST interface as would be the resulting and reporting mechanisms. The other aspect of REST that I mentioned is the use of a RESTful client within the tool, and I'll just quickly go back to that diagram, where that RESTful client would talk to an external RESTful server. And an example of that for certain Avnu, Automotive, and PTP testing purposes is available openly on our website. There might be a requirement to add or create an account, but there's no other membership cost or such involved in that. This ability with the RESTful client is not yet in the released version of our tool. We do have various branches that have this capability in part, and it is an area that we're actively working to address to help speed our own testing efforts. But if this aspect of REST control of device is of interest to you, you're not alone, and we welcome your feedback and continued discussion on that topic. The bitfire tool is already available. It's on our website. Apologies, I don't have the link to it, and I went past it. But if you search our website, the bitfire tool is available right now. It is targeted at such things as PCS testing, that's the physical coding sublayer, and MAC testing for the Ethernet chipset vendors predominantly. However, we do have automotive variants of this available that support a 100 base T1 interface. And while you'll note I don't have a name for this test tool, it will be available by or before summer is our target to support some of our customer interests. And to the question, there is the question, sorry, I should repeat. Is this tool going to be available directly from UNH? Is it just software that sits on off-the-shelf components? The FPGAs are commercially available. However, the HDL and supporting software for that HDL would be from UNH-IOL. I see your comment, Abe, and I'll simply acknowledge that we are trying to do our very best to enable those customers who might have an interest in testing with us to test in-house. And I do encourage the consideration of those in attendance to, if not yourself, your suppliers, your customers, work with us in whatever capacity and obtain early access to the test offerings that this tool provides, as there is a large number of tests covered. As Daroc mentioned, across the various test plans, over 1,500 test cases that can be tested in-house. Yes, some are manual, but 80% or so are automated and really, really speeds the certification path for those pursuing Avnu Alliance certification, the IEEE Power Profile certification, Open Alliance certification. I highly recommend pre-testing with this tool in-house before coming into our schedule, as we are seeing a period of high demand, largely, I think, because of all the activity over the past year. Many companies have been busy, that is for sure. They've been well using their time. Question, what does 802.1 AS 2020 ready mean? The intention there of my comment is act as a time relay where necessary, which is more for future 1588 capability of HSR PRP. But having that native capability, I suspect will be beneficial in any of our future test plans around CD and redundancy. But specifically to the question around 2020, the only relevant piece I would point to is with the FPGA support, we will be able to readily add one-step support. The Oregano Systems hardware we use today does have some one-step support, but there are some limitations as well. And I'm hoping to work with the FPGA platform to work past those limitations. The other aspect of this is less specific to 2020 and more specific to things like the time-aware shaper, where the hardware really does need to be working in concert between the gPTP stack and the time-aware shaping schedule, and something we just can't offload to software. But with that, the real aspect of this area that is in development is the need to work on a test plan to address AS capabilities beyond the older 2011 standard. And there are some on this call definitely who have interest in this, and it is an ongoing discussion I look forward to having with those of you with that interest. So there are many TSN profiles in the works. As I allude to here, I'm working to try to define some for particular DoD interests. I'm working in support of the 802.1 activities for 802.1 DG, the automotive profile that is still in draft. I'm working with the IEC IEEE 6802 industrial TSN profile. You may or may not be aware that this week during the IEEE interim was, I think, the first official meeting of the SAE IEEE aerospace TSN profile. So there's quite a bit of profile activity happening in various standards organizations. And all of this is building upon the base standards, 802.1 AS, either 2011 or 2020, QBV, QBU, CB, etc. But there are, at last count, 42 different 802.1 standards referenced by just the industrial TSN profile. There's quite a lot to cover. There's quite a lot that one might guess at wrongly as far as what a OEM or other end user, utility or such might wish to use in these spaces. Oh, and of course I neglected the telecom TSN profile, I'm sorry. But there's many different areas of interest, and it's through feedback with our members and input from our members that helps guide us most directly. So I do encourage this discussion to not end here, but to just be a continuation of many conversations I've had with many of you over the past several years. A question about whether we'll support 802.1 AS 2020 with our IXIA platform. We are customers of IXIA, which therefore my point being we will continue to see supported updates from IXIA as they add AS capability. We'll receive that capability, but we are restricted to when they release that capability, of course. So if there was particular features of AS that IXIA supports, we would have that available with our in-house test offerings. And I'm sorry, the last question, I'm not quite clear. Maybe it was around the IXIA automation. If that is the case, what we automate right now with the IXIA platform is our credit-based shaper testing, where we have saved configurations that our tool loads, runs, gathers the results from the IXIA, processes those results in the Violet tool, and provides our analysis of those results in the tool. It is not readily extensible in that regard, as we would have to provide saved test configurations for the various test modes or test cases that we wish to make use of the IXIA for. I would simply ask, when there are cases that you believe are better done by or can be done by an IXIA platform and they have benefit over the current offerings of the software solutions or other solutions that Violet might offer, feel free to reach out to us, because we do have that IXIA hardware and we do have the ability to automate around it. It is something we can look at adding in due time. Many good questions. Thank you all. Are there others? So the question that comes back as far as which test cases, FQTSS or gPTP, will REST API be most helpful with? Again, I think the context here is the REST API of the tools offering, where we can provide that REST server to connect to and drive the tool. So effectively, what this, one way to look at this is, once the tool is configured, which in my opinion is easier using the tool's user interface, but once that tool is configured for your particular test needs, the REST API makes it very easy to, through whatever continuous integration process you're utilizing, to call up a test, have it run, get the result, and iterate. So whether you're using some form of a Jenkins or equivalent process, it should be readily possible to call up a test and have that run. So it doesn't matter whether it's an FQTSS test using an IXIA or a gPTP test using an Oregano, as long as the test station you're calling out to is configured and set up, then the REST server will be very easy to integrate into your CI process. As Daroc showed in the demo video, the REST interface is documented in the tool when the server's turned on, and fairly easy to work with. You can modify the configuration while the tool is running through the REST interface, but you have to know the XML terms, which are parsable from the XML configuration files. But the process for that would be one better to engage with us offline on as far as supporting you properly. It is a feature, the REST server, that many of our customers have asked for. We're happy to freely provide it as part of the licensed aspect of our tool. I do want to make a couple points, as I think some customers often trip over this somewhat small, but still a significant issue. We recommend and encourage our customers to make use of a cloud license. One of the reasons for that cloud license capability is it allows you to run the Violet tool wherever you happen to have a need. As Daroc mentions, I believe in the video, the Ixia support we have, because of certain requirements around IX network and the nature of the connectivity there, they are running in Windows 10. As commented, unless you're using an Echo card, which unfortunately are no longer available from Echo Audio, the only other hardware timestamping support that we offer in Violet is in Linux, Ubuntu 18.04. So in the interest of encouraging our customers to most economically make use of our offering, the cloud license allows them to run a station in Ubuntu for the testing using, for example, the Intel i210 or the Oregano SYN 1588 NIC. And when you have a need to use the Ixia hardware, shut that tool down and start up the tool on a Windows platform to run your IX network-based Ixia testing through Violet. Obviously, if your needs necessitate multiple concurrent tools, we're happy to support that. If a cloud license access from your test environment is not possible, we have floating license servers that we can support or other solutions to best support your need. But we do try to be as flexible as we can be in supporting your ongoing testing efforts in a variety of scenarios. Let's see here. Still have time for a few other questions if any have not been addressed to your satisfaction. Please feel free to take a moment to let us address you directly. On our website, there's a question about system requirements. I am recently updated our system requirements website link to more clearly specify Linux 18.04 is what we're currently supporting, etc. If you have further questions about our system requirements that aren't answered on that web link, please let me know. Again, sorry, let me put that web link up rather than just refer to it. Our solutions, test tools, Avnu, for example, will bring you to a page that shows you our system requirements. It is, of course, 2021. We do have an interest in advancing to the Ubuntu 20.04 long-term or LTS release, but we're not yet there. So 18.04 is still what we recommend. I will also make a quick mention that we have recently received a dual port Oregano. Oregano Systems has their SYN 1588 network interface cards that we've been utilizing for a decade now. They've recently come out with a dual port version of that card. There's a driver update required to make use of that. We're working to integrate that into our release so that if you happen to have or plan to have access to that dual port card, it will ease a little bit of some of the bridge tests, looking at correction field validation, etc. And we're working to get that update out as soon as possible using the driver package from the end of last year from Oregano Systems. Would we recommend a dual boot OS for controlling Echo and Oregano on Windows and Linux? It is something we've done before with the same PC. It certainly can be done. There's all the normal problems of getting what's the secure boot to work properly with Windows 10 and Grub and Ubuntu. If there's comfort on your side with dealing with that dual boot problem, then there should not be any problem with dual booting to support the Ixia or Echo capability in Windows and then rebooting into Linux to support that need. Daroc, do you have any other comments on that? Am I forgetting anything?
I will say It's something that I know several of our developers, including myself, do because we often need to test Violet in both operating systems. So it's certainly possible. What I will say though is there's no particular need to do that if you have a cloud license, because the Oregano and i210 NICs are only useful in Linux, and the Echo and the Echo NICs and the Ixia control are only useful in Windows. So there's no reason that you would be required to dual boot a system, although it's certainly an option that is well supported and known to work.
Yeah, to that point, in a virtual machine with IX networks installed, one could run the Ixia automation tests as well.
Yeah.
I think, Daroc, you might be better able to answer this. In Linux, there is the ability to control the Ixia, but it's just something we have not yet added support for.
That's correct. Somewhat recently, Ixia announced a version of IX Networks that provides the same API and runs in Linux. We just haven't taken the time to actually validate that that is working, but it's something that we're aware of and that we're working towards. I would expect that to come sometime in the next few months.
Let me take a moment to address some of our power profile activities. There are, I think, some here who have a direct vested interest in that. For over a year, and then some, we've been working with the community to offer power profile conformance testing. We've collected devices. We've had pilot testing going for at least grandmaster devices and some boundary clock and transparent clocks and some slave-only devices. We had every intention of having this pilot program completed following some correlation and validation work on site at NIST in Gaithersburg in the middle of March last year. Unfortunately, 2020 turned into what 2020 turned into, and we could not continue our validation work or much of our work on site as we had planned. Nonetheless, we are continuing to move forward. We're continuing to work under certain COVID requirements, but my expectation is the balloting through the IEEE for, as they refer to it, the TSS, the test suite specification for the power profile test plan, the coverage of the two relevant profiles and the 1588 2008 requirements. Will be underway in February, potentially complete by early March, at which point we'll finally be able to start working with the IEEE to list certified 1588 devices for those profiles. So those who have been anxiously awaiting, patiently waiting, we ask just a small additional amount of patience as we work through the process of getting this to completion. The PTP Violet tool that we are making available will enable folks to pre-test in-house before coming through for certification, just to speed in much the same way as for Avnu or the Open Alliance, any of your certification desires. So certainly there may be some test needs, such as more expensive oregano cards or scopes or time references for some of the very precise time and accuracy measurements that need to be performed. But those measurements that you can readily do in-house with the equipment you have, even the low-cost Intel i210s, can enable quite a bit of preparedness around things such as BMCA functionality, use of TLVs, VLANs, etc. So if there's features that any encounter, we're always open to those suggestions, needs, additional areas. Or if you know, AS, I'm sometimes going to call it AS Rev, 802.1 AS 2020 standard, still has, I think, a great deal of interest. There's ongoing work still in 802 for, I believe the proper term is HUT standbys for grandmasters and such. There's quite a bit of activity, and where we can be of use to you, please reach out and let us know if we can work with you. And I'll again remind, security is an important aspect. So if the NTP NTS capabilities or the mentioned 1588 2019 security TLV capabilities are of interest, that is ongoing work that we've published, shared, and continue to address in regards to NTS. Good question. I have a question about a NIC card that supports a T1 PHY. So right now, I make use of a MACH Systems, M-A-C-H Systems media converter that is a back-to-back PHY with very low packet delay variation to convert from 100 base TX to 100 base T1. That's how we currently interface to 100 base T1. 1000 base T1 is a challenge that deserves its own webinar. And our single pair Ethernet group is working with partners to launch the first conformance testing around PCS and PHY control and such for 1000 base T1. The bitfire solution that we do offer for 100 base T1 uses its own custom PHY. But because it's a custom PHY, it has its limitations. It's not a fully capable PHY. Its receive functionality is very limited. So that feature would not satisfy TSN testing. It really is targeted specifically for 802.3 PCS and PHY control validation only. That said, these SFP plus based NICs, the picture I'm showing is of course a fixed RJ45 port NIC, but we are working with platforms that are SFP plus based. I probably should have put it here. We are targeting 10 gig and slower speeds. The stretch goal is to also support 2.5 and 5 gig in that effort. And to the question, the FPGA I'm referencing here that's in development in a perfect world will also support the small number of SFP-based T1 modules that do exist. There are 100-based T1 modules that we have access to, and I believe there are 1000-based T1 SFP modules on the market. And we do, to be clear, I have used those modules with our Ixia platform successfully. So if you have access to one of the Novus 10.1 5-speed or 3-speed modules, they have SFP plus support. By my recollection, we can certainly talk offline about this. I believe the SFP T1 modules that are available on the market will work in that platform as well. So lots of good questions. I really appreciate everyone's time. I absolutely invite and encourage those who took your valuable time to catch up with us today to continue working with us, engaging with us, let us know how we can further support your needs. So with that, I think we have addressed all the questions we have time for, at least today. But again, thank you very much, and perhaps we'll do this again as necessary. We will be sending out a copy to everyone, and again, unless there's any last comments from you, Daroc, or anyone else, thank you for the thanks. Daroc, I do want to give you my thanks for helping to record that demo video. Appreciate it.
No worries. I think this went pretty well.
Great. Great. Again, please feel to reach out after the fact here. Apologies, we couldn't address absolutely every question, but I think we've hit all the high notes here. And again, please reach out offline as necessary. Look forward to working with you all, or continuing to work with you in what I hope will be an even better 2021. Happy New Year. I look forward to a very successful year with you all.